And a good Wednesday morning to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. We're holding on to that blistering heat for a couple more days, and then I promise you some relief is in store in the way of mainly some rain-cooled temperatures, some high temperatures that are going to be pretty staggering numbers, something we haven't seen in a matter of weeks here, talking about high temperatures down into the 80s and something we don't see very commonly during the summertime months. So let's go over your 24-hour rainfall totals first and foremost. I guess the pixel I grabbed right here in Warner Robins, not equating to too much, only about a ½ inch of rain. Certain portions of Houston County definitely saw over an inch of rain. There were some pretty widespread showers and storms yesterday that did a very, very good job of cooling down the atmosphere. Up here in Macon, only recording about a trace of rain, and then you can see 1.2 inches just north of I-16 to the west of Dublin. And then you get down into southern Lawrence County, nearly 2 inches of rain. But the counties that topped out with the most rain were going to be Dooley, Crisp, and Wilcox counties. Even some totals above 3 inches, 3.5 inches of rain east of I-75 in Crisp County. 3.3 inches of rain around the Abbeville area in Wilcox County. So that's generally the higher totals that we did see, and it was mainly secluded to those counties because they saw their fair share of some thunderstorms that lingered into the nighttime and overnight hours. Some of those even stuck around into the early morning hours. We were still seeing some flashes of lightning at the 5 a.m. hour earlier this morning over in Wilcox County, but it did eventually fizzle out. Nearly 3 inches of rain over here just around downtown Wrightsville in Johnson County, and up by the Lake Sinclair area about 1.7 inches of rain in certain areas just north of Milledgeville. But it does look like most areas just got minuscule amounts of rain. We did see some pretty good coverage of rain indicated by more shades of that dark blue and definitely our frequent areas of widespread green and a couple patches of that yellow and orange colors that are getting upwards to above 3 inches of rain, especially in those southern 3 counties I was just referring to. So your main headlines with your forecast as we head into the halfway point of the work week. We will be staying hot until we get to Saturday. That's when we're looking at that temperature drop to finally settle in. Cooler for the weekend, but it's going to come at the cost of lots of rain and lots of clouds. We'll go over the setup that we are expecting as we head into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and how that's going to pertain to some cooler temperatures. So right now, let's take a walk around the quad where we're starting to get more glimpses of some sunshine. So we've had plenty of clouds around throughout the morning hours, which has contributed to a bit of a slower warm up than we've seen the last couple of days. Not a bad thing whatsoever. Now taking a look at some partly cloudy skies over the Georgia National Fairgrounds and mostly sunny skies in downtown Macon, downtown Dublin. Warner Robins still has its fair share of cloud cover this morning, but also in Houston County specifically, we saw some of the lighter drizzle showers. They were approaching the southern end of the county. Didn't quite make their way up to the Georgia National Fairgrounds, but areas in far southern Houston County like Elko and Henderson, they probably saw a couple of sprinkles early this morning, and that was all associated with what once was a couple of storms during the overnight hours down in Crisp and Wilcox counties, and then kind of a section of that broke off and continued straight up north along I-75. Here's a look at your current temperatures. Boy, this looks so much better than it has the last couple of days. Upper 70s and low 80s as opposed to some mid and upper 80s because we've had mostly sunny skies the last 2 days. There's been nothing slowing down that warm up, but the cloud cover has made all the difference so far. But still, these numbers aren't really telling the true story. We'll get into those feels like temperatures in just a moment. Right now, 81 degrees in Macon. You can see that the state of Georgia, we kind of find ourselves, at least the northern half of the state, in maybe a shade of yellow and maybe even some flashes of that light green color as you go up and towards the mountains. But the southern portion of the state of Georgia, not necessarily the same forecast, somewhere in the mid to upper 80s like we see in Panama City and down to Jacksonville just across the Georgia-Florida state line. 87 is the warmest number I'm spotting right now. Now I take a look over to the west. I see an 88 in Little Rock, 88 in Dallas. So those two areas are going to take the cake for the warmest title of, or the title of warmest temperature here before the 11 a.m. hour in the eastern United States. Dew point temperatures, lots of dark green is all you need to know. It is very swampy and very sticky outside. That's going to continue to inflate what it feels like outside. And taking a look at your humidity levels across the entire state of Georgia, some form of that dark green shade is present. Of course, you go closer up to the mountains, that green color is a little bit lighter, but we have our fair share of dark green areas that are going to be in east central Georgia and especially going down into southeast Georgia and coastal Georgia. And it's kind of the same story all across the southeast United States. So here's a look at your feels like numbers. Gordon, even despite the cloud cover, does not want to budge whatsoever. Feels like 101 right now. You can see that most areas, it's kind of a dividing line between the 80s and the 90s. Feels like 85 up in Monticello. One county to the southwest, it feels like 95 up in Forsyth. Feels like 86 in Dublin, 96 down in McRae, 91 in Vidalia, and 87 in Macon, 89 in Warner Robins. But Gordon is definitely a bit of an outlier here at this hour. We are starting to see some more 90s in the forecast, but just giving you an idea of how much of a role that humidity is playing on the feels like numbers. Because your temperatures aren't too bad, maybe at the warmest about 82 or 83 degrees. In some areas you're seeing over a 10-degree increase for what it does feel like outside. That's what happens once you start to get some of those numbers into the 80s each and every morning. Nothing to really talk about in the form of winds. Maybe an occasional sustained wind of about 6 to 7 miles per hour in areas like Warner Robins and down to Cordele. But overall, it's a story of relatively calm winds early this morning, so not much that's influencing your forecast. But we'll take a look at the numbers from yesterday. First things first, we'll talk about the low because there's more talking points with the high temperature that we hit yesterday. 73 for a low that was really close to average, just 1 degree warmer. We have been hovering above average in terms of what those morning low temperatures are very recently, just because our temperatures get so warm during the day, and in fact they just don't really have a lot of time in order to cool down necessarily. So we hit a high of 100 yesterday up here in Macon. Definitely overshot what I had forecasted, but Macon was just one of those areas that dodged the rain, at least in southern Bibb County. Got a little bit more time with the sunshine, and of course it continued to lead to the warm up yesterday. So 100 for a high temperature. That is the second 100-degree day that we've had in 2025 so far, coming one day after we recorded 102 on Monday. 94 degrees is the average high temperature, so obviously it was above average by a good amount of degrees, about 6 degrees. And then 104 was the record back in 1952. That year might sound familiar because that is the same year that we broke the record high for on Monday, but the record high back in 1952 for yesterday was 104 degrees. So we didn't really sniff any kind of record-breaking territory yesterday, and we have not even really had to talk about this record low category right here. 1897, it was 63 degrees to kick off your July 28th morning back over 100 years ago. So those temperatures would definitely feel mighty pleasant. And in fact, we did record a little bit of rain yesterday, only 3/100ths of an inch, so very minuscule amounts. Your departure of rain continued to tick down from about, I believe it was 1.13 inches above average, but now we're hovering at 1 inch flat above where we should be this time of year. There does look to be some more widespread rain in the forecast. Maybe today, maybe into Friday, but definitely Saturday and Sunday. So hopefully we can start to get that number to go back in the positive direction as opposed to continuing to decrease. Sunrise yesterday, 6:47 in the morning, and sunset was at 8:35. So still holding on to pretty much a really long period of some daylight as we continue into the month of July. But Monday still did mark the hottest day of 2025 so far. Our recorded high temperature here in Macon was 102 degrees. So that was not only the first 100-degree day that we have seen, it definitely took it a step or two above in terms of what the actual temperature was. It broke a 73-year record for the high temperature. Our high temperature all time on Monday that we have, our highest temperature that we have ever recorded was 101 back in 1952, that year I was just mentioning. So we did break a record. 2025 will pop up on that almanac this time next year when we get to July 27th. But it was also the hottest day that we have seen in quite some time, specifically 398 days, nearly 400 days since we've seen a temperature of 102. That happened back in late June of last year. So about a year and a month ago, we recorded another 102-degree day. Don't quite know how much the humidity was running rampant. Maybe it wasn't necessarily running as rampant as it was yesterday in our forecast. But there is a little bit of relief, not quite as hot, I guess you could say. It still is warranted a heat advisory here in central Georgia. It's very good to be out of the extreme heat warning, but a heat advisory is something that you should still take serious as well. That does mean that the heat can get very exhausting very quickly. And we do once again have afternoon shower and storm chances. We'll continue to have those each and every day, but it's going to be more of a prolonged time period that we see showers and storms as we move into Saturday and Sunday. Variable winds about 5 to 15 miles per hour throughout this afternoon. And of course, they can be gustier if you do catch an isolated thunderstorm, and that's going to be some gustier winds that are going to be in more isolated areas. That means it's only going to be maybe a certain portion of the city that you live in and maybe a certain portion of the county that you live in, and obviously not going to be widespread whatsoever. But this high temperature, it definitely is still warm. It's right on average for where we should be this time of year, so not necessarily overbearingly hot, but it does look a whole lot better than that 100-degree mark that I had on this graphic just 2 days ago on Monday. So we are seeing a steady downtick in those high temperatures, and part of the reason we should only climb to 94 today is because that cloud cover continues to play a role in a very slow warm up throughout this morning. And by the time we get into the afternoon and this cloud cover does clear out, we'll begin to see some scattered showers and storms pop up into the picture as well. But that's not really telling the whole story. You have to factor in the humidity and take a look at how high our heat index does climb later on today. Still feeling like the triple digits by 1 p.m. I mean, that's a little bit later than about 10 to 11 a.m., which we have seen it as of the last couple of days, and hovering in the low triple digits for most of the afternoon, but could even get up to 105 at the very peak of it before some rain does get going. And once again, the heavier rainfall that you get, that's going to be associated with some of your thunderstorms. You're going to hear lots of rumbles of thunder, see flashes of lightning off in the distance. And yes, it's not the most conducive weather to be outside for, but the heavier rain that you do receive, it will do a better job of knocking these numbers down a little bit more. So it does look like we're picking up on at least some lighter showers here in the Macon area as we go into the afternoon hours, but this still isn't as bad as we have seen those numbers climb as of recently. So you can see that the extreme heat warning is still present over to the west along the Mississippi River, but now all of central Georgia remains in a heat advisory. So that same heat advisory that has been issued for our westernmost counties the past 2 days, that is continuing into not only today, but it's also going into tomorrow. So that you see that this is going to go until 8 p.m. on Thursday evening. And I wouldn't doubt that we see an even further extension of this because we're still forecasting very similar temperatures Friday afternoon as we do have for Thursday. I do believe that Friday afternoon is going to be just about as hot, but feels like temperatures up to 108 could be in the forecast throughout today. So not quite the 112 like we were talking about yesterday, but it still is a heat alert. It's something that you need to take serious. It's something that you need to make sure that you're keeping your body cool, hydrating very frequently, all of those tips and tricks that we've been ushering and repeating and sounding like a broken record the last couple of days, telling you over and over and over again. Just want to emphasize that you need to take care of your body during some of this heat that can get very, very exhausting and can be unbearable at times. So here's a live look at your satellite and radar picture. If we were to maybe extend this window, go out a little bit farther, say take it back to 3 a.m. when all the current satellite imagery was popping up, you would get a good glimpse of the thunderstorms that were popping up in Criss County, Dooley County, and Wilcox County. Now looking back at it in retrospect, I probably should have done that with the satellite and radar image. But you can get a brief flash of a couple of lighter showers that were right here on the corners of Taylor County, Macon County, into Peach County, and portions of Crawford County. That's all associated with that cluster of lighter showers I was talking about this morning that was moving up from southern Houston County, got really close to Perry, and then did very fortunately fizzle out because I'm sure that's not something that all the students wanted to have or wanted to combat early this morning for the first day of school in Houston County. And not only Houston County, Peach County, the second day of school. And of course, it does look like a couple sprinkles were present there. I think that was after many of the kiddos were heading out into first period, maybe into second period. So probably didn't pertain much to your forecast. The bigger story has been the cloud cover that's very widespread this morning, but we are seeing signs of this beginning to thin out. So of course, mostly sunny skies, the more sunlight that you start to get, that's going to lead to a greater temperature increase. And in turn, when you factor in the humidity, it's going to lead to a greater feels like temperature increase as well. So there's a lot more cloud cover actually in the northern portion of the state of Georgia right now, especially along the I-85 corridor, getting up to around Commerce and areas north of Commerce and northeast Georgia. There's still a couple of sprinkles, plenty of widespread cloud cover. Those temperatures should definitely be a little bit lower than the rest of the state of Georgia. But remember, when we were looking at the temperature map, we were talking about, hey, southern Georgia is definitely feeling a lot more like Florida, and that's because they don't have as much in the way of cloud cover that's blocking some of that sunshine or reflecting some of that solar radiation back out into the atmosphere, as opposed to what we do have in the northern half of the state. So let's go into future view, time out your rain chances, and kind of talk potential about what we're expecting this afternoon. You can see scattered showers get going just past lunchtime, very similar timing to what we did see yesterday. And once again, a couple of storms could be present. Future view is still not buying that we see that good of a coverage of rain, maybe until we get into the nighttime hours. Just like we have the last 2 nights, we've seen some showers and thunderstorms. Hang on until the overnight hours and maybe a little bit into the early morning hours. So you still can't rule that out of the realm of possibility, just given how warm it is going to be. But today shouldn't quite be to the threshold of the last couple of days. I do believe we'll probably see activity fizzle out fairly quickly after we go into the midnight hour. But of course, if you get awoken in the middle of the night by a rumble of thunder, maybe a flash of lightning, don't be too alarmed. This is more than likely just going to be a sub-severe thunderstorm, your typical thunderstorm that you normally do see in the summertime months. So the potential for rain, obviously this latest model run not picking up on too much, but something I have been doing, I have been going over the rain chances of what the graph model specifically has been saying the last 2 days, because we've definitely seen better coverage of rain in the afternoon hours Monday and Tuesday. Monday, the models had almost nothing in the way of rain, and we actually ended up seeing a good coverage, maybe about 30 or 40% of some scattered showers and some storms. And yesterday I went above that rain chance once again. I think 60% kind of covered the bases. A lot of areas did receive some rainfall yesterday. So I have gone above the rain chance for today. It's still kind of a 50-50 shot if you do catch an afternoon scattered shower or storm, and you're going to root for the rain once again, because high temperatures in the mid-90s are definitely going to feel a whole lot warmer, well into the triple digits, and we have the potential for seeing some feels like numbers into the upper 100s, maybe even flirting with 110 in a select few areas. Now let's go into Thursday afternoon. Thursday, your rain chances are looking slightly less impressive, so I wouldn't bank on seeing anything in the way of rain on Thursday afternoon. Still think we'll see a little bit better coverage than what Future View says, but Thursday has been one of the days that we are forecasting to be a little bit drier, just because we're going to kind of be in between certain patterns. So we have been dealing with these pop-up showers and storms that are operating off the heat of the day each and every day, and then Thursday is going to be that day that we're kind of just before seeing the entry of our frontal boundary, and that's going to start to push in as we go into Friday afternoon. So Friday afternoon, scattered showers and storms just past lunchtime. I mean right after lunchtime, maybe around lunchtime, that we do see a couple of those in the picture. It does look like pretty decent coverage of rain, and as we go into the nighttime hours on Friday, still holding on to a couple of storms before all that activity does fizzle out into the overnight hours. But then Saturday, that's where we're going to start to see some more widespread rain chances, and we'll talk about why that is as well. Still keep forgetting to change this banner right here. This is not your weekend outlook. This is your second half of the work week outlook. So this is the next 3 days. I always update this on Friday and give you an outlook at Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Just forgot to change it over the last couple of days. We've been quite busy with back to school stuff, and I've been working on a lot of other graphics for each and every county to make sure that they're feeling included for their first day of school. But your high temperatures actually maybe bumping up a touch. 94 today into 96 on Thursday and Friday. You do see a 30% chance of rain on Thursday compared to the 50% chance of a shower or storm today. I'd be more confident in seeing some rain today as opposed to Thursday, but Mother Nature has a funny way of maybe giving you some rain one day and a lot of areas saying, hey, where's my rain? Well, I like to tell people, if you don't catch some rain one day in the summertime months, you have a pretty good likelihood, maybe even a better likelihood of seeing some rain the next day. Just kind of, obviously not a scientific prediction right there, but it is just kind of something funny to say. It's very hit or miss during the summertime months. A lot of areas will dodge the rain. A lot of areas will continue to get plenty of rain, like Chris County and Dooley County and Wilcox County over the last 2 days. But you could live up here in the Macon area and say, hey, where's my rain been? Well, the good news is there is a chance each and every day. But going into Friday, you do see that uptick in rain chances, nearly doubling from Thursday into Friday. I do believe we'll see maybe some slightly better coverage than what the models are saying, because we'll actually have a driving force, something that is creating a little bit of organization with rain chances courtesy of an approaching frontal boundary. However, it may be just a little bit to the far north of us in order for us to get more widespread rain chances. But by the time we get to Saturday, it should push down into central Georgia. And then I think it's going to stall. It's going to kind of park itself over the southeast corner of the United States. And it will act as kind of a focal point for where rain does continue to pop up. Those stationary boundaries that we talk about during the summertime months, they have a lot of lift associated with them. So that's just going to enhance that convective process that we talk about. Warm air rises, cool air sinks, and it's also going to in turn lift a lot of that surface moisture that we have present. So if that happens, it's not only going to create widespread cloud cover, it's also going to create our fair share of rain chances. And you can see, look at that temperature drop, 96. If we hit 96 for that first day of August, in a matter of 2 days, by the time we get to August 3rd, we can see nearly a 14-degree temperature drop. The models continue to go lower and lower for what they're forecasting for high temperatures on Sunday. But 88 on Saturday, I mean, that already feels pretty good. So we're just going to get even better if the heat has been too much to bear as of recently. We just have to get through the next 3 days first and foremost. And also, I was telling you about 14-degree temperature drop from Friday to Sunday. That's already very substantial for the summertime season. But pair Sunday up 6 days after what we hit on Monday, 102. That would be a 20-degree temperature drop in a span of about 6 days. Definitely don't see these 80s very much in the summertime months, especially at the end of July, going into the beginning of August, one of our warmest times of the summer season. So definitely make sure that you're making the most of it. Of course, it's not going to be the most conducive for outdoor plans in light of widespread showers and maybe even a couple of storms in the mix. But of course, it is going to be a lot cooler, and that's just what the doctor ordered for a lot of you, I do imagine. Your humidity day by day, we will see a steady downtick, maybe some slightly drier air tries to push in. I think you have a better chance of feeling that slightly drier air the farther north that you live. So that's going to be farther behind the frontal boundary, moving from north to south. And it does look like Sunday is probably the best of the bunch in terms of what it feels like with the muggy and the sticky air outside. Looks like it's more reasonable, but overall your humidity not going to change too much. It's actually great to see this muggy meter finally go into the upper half of this dark green box, because that's definitely been where our dew point temperatures have been hovering as of recently. So it's finally getting on board with that message at the very least, but maybe a slight downtick in the humidity levels by the time we get into the end of the weekend on Sunday. So we go and pick it up with the long range models. This is Saturday at 8 p.m., but not only just 8 p.m., it's really looking like an all-day rain affair, or at least a very gloomy atmosphere with plenty of cloud cover, lots of dark clouds, lots of thick cloud cover. And the thicker clouds that you do have, that's going to in turn reflect a lot more solar radiation back out into the sky. It's not going to allow for as much to break through, say, if you just have some high level clouds that are really thin, and you can still get plenty of sunshine that breaks through those. But widespread rain all across the southeast. That's the message I'm trying to reiterate right here. We'll get a much better view once we get Saturday on our short range future view, which will be the one that we show you each and every day with our forecasts. So it does look like we have a good potential of widespread rain going into Saturday, but not only Saturday, we continue that trend into Sunday, into Monday, and into Tuesday, possibly even into Wednesday next week. So I do have a downtick in the rain chances by the time we go to Monday and Tuesday, just because it's a little bit more uncertain. The farther out in the future that you go, you're seeing less and less agreement amongst these models. And yes, the one thing that we need to see is these shades of blue, these shades of green, very widespread across the state of Georgia in order to up the rain chances a little bit far in the future. But we also need to see good agreement. So where these rain chances continue to pop up, still a little bit uncertain by the time we go into the beginning of next week, but it does look like better rain chances than, say, what we've had over the last couple of days, that being compared to what we have in store for next week. So if we do have these widespread rain chances and we continue to have the cloud cover, that's going to do a very good job of not allowing those temperatures to warm up as much as they could during each and every day. And it's also going to lead to a lot of rain, and the rain definitely does cool the atmosphere down a good bit. So let's talk some tropics. This is something that Ansley Parker did a good job and gave us kind of a pulse check. We haven't talked about the tropics too much. Of course, I try to mention it each and every day, but there hasn't been a lot of activity, the report in the last week, maybe even 2 weeks. We've had some potential areas of development, but none of them have really gotten up above 20, maybe even 30% in nature. But right now, there's still no activity expected within the next 7 days in the Atlantic Basin. I know this update does say 8 a.m. Tuesday. I just keep forgetting to change the day. Like I said, there's a lot of graphics that I'm playing with, and I'm just continue to try to change them each and every day. But this is the 8 a.m. update this morning on Wednesday. Still no activity that you should be worried about, but we are heading into a more active time in terms of hurricane season here in the Atlantic. We really start to see an uptick as we get into the month of August. And taking a look at that, on average, your first hurricane does occur on August 11th. So it doesn't look like we have any definitive signs of really being above average or before average, or maybe even right on that August 11th date. But August to October, averaging 11 to 12 named storms. So that's really where we're getting right in the middle of this red shade, this yellow shade here on the hurricane frequency graphic. And then as we go into the month of October, activity starts to steadily decline. But we still have a ways to go in terms of hurricane season. We still have the entire month of August, September, October, and November, but November is a very quiet month typically on record. You can see once you get past October 20th and you move into the month of November somewhere around here, it's about the same frequency of activity as we have been seeing of recent weeks. So we still have a long ways to go. We still have about 4 months in total in terms of hurricane season. It will end officially on November 30th, but really the most active months of hurricane season are upcoming, and that's something we'll continue to keep a very close eye on over the foreseeable future. So let's take a look at your 7-day forecast. Hot, hot, hot for the next 3 days as we roll into the month of August. And then the difference between the first and the second days of August is going to be quite drastic. Steady downtick in those high temperatures as we roll into the weekend. And if you have any travel plans to say maybe go to Atlanta this weekend, go up to the mountains or something, these temperatures are probably going to hover even a little bit cooler than what we have here in central Georgia. It's definitely going to be a very welcome cooler spell. And then our high temperatures are starting to bump back up, but they are still in the 80s for Monday and Tuesday, still hovering not only below average of 94 this time of year, but below the 90-degree mark. So we definitely don't see this each and every day. That's why I'm telling you, you need to make the most of it. Those dry periods that you do have when they're not catching a shower or when you're not catching a storm, make sure to enjoy some time outside. That's when you want to go out, maybe run some errands. Of course, it is going to be quite messy, but as long as it's not thundering, it's still going to be a conducive atmosphere to be outside. And definitely going outside, maybe doing some dancing in the rain, and just being very thankful that we're seeing a temperature drop at the very least is probably going to be a good way to spend your weekend. So now going into the future, we are going to continue to look ahead. Back to school got kicked off this past Tuesday, so yesterday, and we welcomed our second school district back to class this morning. That was Houston County. Obviously why I'm wearing my gray and my black today, sporting the Hoco Bears. Labor Day coming up on September 1st, so that is going to be Labor Day Monday. So August 31st and August 30th, if you're like myself, that's going to be your first 2 days of some real college football. That's going to be week 1 on the schedule. Looking very forward to that, but also for the kiddos that are heading back to school, you only have about a month to go until your first 3-day weekend where you can get some relief in terms of maybe going back to class those first couple of days and teachers giving you a pop quiz sometime at the end of the week into next week. That's just something that really puts a damper on that first day of school. So you do have some relief in sight for a longer weekend as we head into the beginning of September. Peak of hurricane season specifically will be on September 10th. But like I said, we're going to start to see an uptick in activity as we move into the month of August. August and September are our most active months in terms of hurricane season, and you could probably tie October, at least the first half of October, in that as well. And the first day of fall, if these cooler temperatures are just exactly your cup of tea, that's what you've been wanting. You've just been wanting a little bit of relief for a couple of days. Well, we have more days of relief upcoming as we go into the end of September. We'll hold on to those summertime temperatures probably for the first week or so of October. Typically, once you get to the second half of the Georgia National Fair and into the middle of October, we'll start to see some of those cooler fall-like temperatures a lot more frequently, but the first day of the new season will be in less than 2 months. So Yes, summer is coming to a close, but we will hold on to the summer weather for all of the month of August and for most of September. But once we go into September, we'll start to see more frequent cooler spells, and then by the time we get into October, they are going to be even more frequent than that. So July 31st is tomorrow. We have a couple schools heading back. Jones County and Dooley County will be hitting the classroom, and along with that, Taylor County and Lamar County heading back to school once again tomorrow. August 1st on Friday is going to be a busy day. Make sure you tune into 13 WMAZ Morning all throughout the next 2 days and throughout the first half of next week. We have lots of back to school fun planned, and we're coming to you for not only 2 hours of news now, but 4 hours of news with the last 2 hours on our 13 WMAZ Plus app. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at 10:30 tomorrow.